My mother called me on a Tuesday morning to announce, in the same tone she used to read grocery lists, that I would be covering my sister's mortgage payments until she got back on track. What my mother didn't know was that I had already emptied my savings account, accepted a position in another state, and spent the last 4 months watching my sister drain our parents dry in ways they still refused to believe. This is where everything unraveled, and none of them saw it coming. The tension headache had started somewhere around mile marker 12 on the drive to my parents' house, a 2-story colonial in a suburb of Columbus that smelled like pine cleaner and old arguments. I had made this drive every Sunday for the past 6 years. It was automatic now, like breathing, like bracing for impact. I was 31 years old. I worked as a senior financial analyst for a regional insurance firm, a job I had clawed into through 7 years of 60-hour weeks, 2 professional certifications I paid for myself, and exactly 0 help from anyone in my family. I drove a sensible car, lived in a clean apartment, kept a budget the way some people keep religion. I was not rich. I was careful. There is a difference, and my family had never understood it. I sat in my car in the driveway for a moment, fingers wrapped around my travel mug. The coffee inside had gone lukewarm somewhere around exit 47, but I kept holding it anyway. It was something to grip. My sister Lauren had moved back into my parents' house 8 months ago after her second divorce. She was 28, between jobs in a way that had been going on for nearly 3 years, and currently enrolled in what she called a life coaching certification program, which, as far as I could tell, meant she watched webinars in her pajamas and charged our parents for the subscription. She had a daughter, my niece Gracie, who was 6 and the only genuinely innocent person in this story. I went inside. My father was at the kitchen table with his reading glasses on, frowning at a stack of papers. My mother was at the stove, stirring something that smelled like the rosemary chicken she made when she wanted the meal to feel like a peace offering. Lauren was on the couch in the living room, legs tucked under her, scrolling her phone, looking like someone who had never experienced consequences. "Hey," I said. My mother turned and gave me the smile she reserved for difficult conversations she had already decided the outcome of. "Sweetheart, good timing. Sit down. We want to talk to you about something." I sat. I kept my coffee mug in my hands. My father cleared his throat. He had the particular energy of a man who had been coached on what to say and was now performing it from memory. "Lauren has been going through a rough stretch," he began, as if the last 3 years had been a rough stretch and not a sustained lifestyle choice. "And your mother and I have been talking. We've been covering her car payment and her phone bill, and we've helped with groceries. And that's fine. That's what family does. But she has an apartment lined up. A nice place, actually, close to Gracie's school. The landlord wants first, last, and security. That's $3,200 up front. And then the monthly rent is $1,400. I looked at my coffee mug. I said nothing. My mother jumped in, her voice warming the way it always did when she was about to ask for something unreasonable. "You're so good with money, Claire. You've always been so responsible. And Lauren is trying. She really is. The life coaching program is almost done, and she's already talking to potential clients." I looked up. I looked at Lauren. She was still on her phone. "Lauren," I said, "are you listening to this conversation?" She glanced up. "What? Oh, yeah. Mom and Dad thought maybe you could help out for a few months. Just until the business gets going." "A few months," I repeated. "Maybe 6, my father said. We'd pay you back." They had never paid me back anything. Not the $400 I lent my father when his car registration lapsed 3 years ago. Not the $200 I gave my mother for a birthday gift for Lauren that she said she would reimburse. Not any of it. I had stopped keeping a list because the list had started to feel like a wound I was reopening on purpose. I looked at my father. I said, "So, the $3,200 up front plus $1,400 a month, for 6 months. That's roughly $11,000. My mother winced at the number, said out loud. "When you say it like that, it sounds like a lot." "It is a lot, Mom. You make good money," Lauren said from the couch, still not looking up from her phone. "You don't even have kids. You don't know what expenses are like." I felt something shift very slightly behind my sternum. Not anger exactly. Something colder. "Lauren," I said carefully, "when did you last work a full-time job?" She looked up then. Her eyes went flat. "That's not relevant." It's pretty relevant if I'm being asked to fund your rent. You're not being asked, my mother said, and her voice had changed. The warmth was gone. She was using the other voice now, the one that meant the performance of niceness was over. Your family. This is what family does. Your sister is struggling and you have the means to help her, and that should be enough of a reason. My father nodded once, firmly, like a gavel coming down. I held my coffee mug in both hands and looked at the three of them. My mother with her chin raised. My father with his reading glasses still on, papers still in front of him. Lauren examining her cuticles. I thought about the envelope in my bag. I thought about the email I had received 6 weeks ago with the subject line, Offer Letter, Chicago Regional Director of Analytics. I thought about the lease I had signed on an apartment in Lincoln Park. I thought about the moving company I had already paid a deposit to. I took a slow sip of my lukewarm coffee. Let me think about it, I said. My mother exhaled. She visibly softened. I knew you'd be reasonable, she said. I drove home and I sat with it for exactly 40 minutes. Then I called my friend Dana, who had been my college roommate, and was now a paralegal in Columbus and knew things. I need you to look something up for me, I said. A property record. She pulled it in about 10 minutes. She called me back while I was standing in my kitchen, still in my coat. Claire, she said. This is weird. Tell me. The condo Lauren is supposedly renting. It's not a rental listing. It's listed for sale. It has been for 4 months, and the listing agent is someone named Marcus Webb. I know that name, I said slowly. Yeah, Dana said. Because he's Lauren's boyfriend. The one she started seeing right before her divorce was finalized. I sat down on my kitchen floor. Not because my legs gave out. Because sometimes information is heavy enough that it's easier to be closer to the ground. Lauren wasn't renting an apartment. Lauren was buying one. And Marcus, her boyfriend, who she had never formally introduced to our parents, was the listing agent. The $3,200 wasn't a security deposit. It was going toward a down payment on a property that would go into Marcus's name or hers, and our parents had no idea, and they were going to ask me to fund it. I did not call my parents that night. I did not text Lauren. I kept very still, the way I had learned to keep still in the months before making a major financial move, and I thought about what I actually knew versus what I could prove. The next morning, I called in a favor from a colleague who ran title searches as part of our firm's due diligence process. I gave him Marcus Webb's name and the address Dana had found. He came back to me in 2 hours. The property had been under contract twice in the past year. The first contract fell through. The second contract was currently active and listed Lauren's name as buyer with a co-borrower. The co-borrower was our father. I read that line 3 times. Our father was a co-borrower on a mortgage he did not know he was attached to. I called Dana back. She said, quietly, that this was something that happened sometimes when someone with access to financial documents forges a signature on a loan application. She said it happened more often with family members than strangers. She said I should get a copy of the application if I could. She said I should talk to an attorney. I did not confront Lauren. I did not confront my parents. I made an appointment with a real estate attorney for the following Wednesday, which was 4 days away, and I went to work, and I kept my coffee mug on my desk, and I breathed. The Sunday dinner invitation came before Wednesday. My mother called and said the whole family was coming for dinner, that my aunt and uncle from Dayton were driving in, that it was important, that I should come. Her voice had the particular texture of someone trying not to sound urgent while being very urgent. I went. My aunt and uncle were already there when I arrived, seated in the living room with the slightly too formal posture of people who had been briefed on something in advance. My uncle had his arms crossed. My aunt kept touching the back of her hair. Lauren was in the kitchen helping my mother, which she never did, which meant she had been told to look helpful. My father stood up when I came in and shook my hand like we were business associates, which he had only ever done once before in my life, when I graduated college. Something is wrong, I thought. We sat down to dinner, and my mother served the chicken, and no one said anything of substance for approximately 15 minutes, while everyone passed the green beans and commented on the weather. Then my father set down his fork and said, "We wanted to have everyone together because we have some exciting news. Lauren is buying a home." My aunt made a sound of genuine delight. "Oh, how wonderful. It's close to Gracie's school." my mother said, beaming. Marcus found it. He's been so helpful. My uncle looked at me. He knew something was off. He had been a contractor for 30 years and had a nose for load-bearing problems. I kept my face neutral. I held my water glass. We've decided, my father said, and he straightened slightly, the way he did when he was announcing something he had practiced, that we're going to contribute to the down payment. It's an investment in Lauren's future, and it's the right thing to do. How much? My uncle asked before I could. My father hesitated. $40,000. The table went quiet. My aunt looked at my mother. My uncle uncrossed and recrossed his arms. Lauren stared at her plate with the particular stillness of someone who already knew this number and was waiting to see how it landed. Dad, I said, where is that money coming from? We have savings, my father said. It's our money to use. You have savings, I said. You and Mom have been talking about retiring in 3 years. That's retirement savings. This is an investment, my mother said. In family. I looked at Lauren. I said, Lauren, does Marcus know that this money is coming from Mom and Dad's retirement account? Lauren looked up. Her expression was the careful blankness of someone managing a performance. That's between Marcus and me and Mom and Dad. Actually, I said, I think it's a little more complicated than that. My father frowned. What does that mean? I had not planned to do this at dinner. I had planned to wait until after the attorney appointment. But sometimes a situation moves faster than your plan, and you have to decide in real time whether to let it go further or stop it here. I had a moving truck coming in 11 days. I had an offer letter with a start date. I had nothing left to protect in this version of my life. I reached into my bag. I had printed 3 documents that morning, the same 3 documents I had been carrying for 5 days in a folder I kept in the bottom of my tote bag under my planner. Dad, I said, sliding the first page across the table toward him. Do you recognize this? He picked it up. He looked at it. He looked at it for a long time. It's a loan application, he said. It's the loan application for the property Lauren is purchasing, I said. Look at the co-borrower line. He found it. I watched his face. That's my name, he said. He sounded genuinely confused. That's my social security number. Did you sign this? He looked up at me. Then he looked at Lauren. Lauren had gone very still. Dad, I said again, did you sign this application? No, he said slowly. I've never seen this document. The room was completely silent. My aunt had her hand over her mouth. My uncle had gone very straight in his chair. Lauren, my mother said, and it was barely above a whisper. Lauren, what is this? It's fine, Lauren said. Her voice was tight. Marcus explained it. It's a formality. It's just to make the application stronger. Dad's credit score is better than mine, and it doesn't mean anything in practice. It means everything in practice, my uncle said. He had a voice that got very quiet when he was serious. That man's name is on a mortgage. That is a legal and financial liability. Lauren pushed back from the table slightly. You don't understand how real estate works. I've been in construction for 30 years, my uncle said. I understand exactly how it works. Lauren, my father said, and his voice was the voice I had heard maybe 3 times in my life, low and stripped of everything decorative. Did you put my name on a loan I didn't consent to? Lauren looked at our mother. Our mother looked at our father. Our father looked at the paper in his hands. I slid the second document across. This is the current listing status of the property, I said. It's not a rental unit. It was never a rental unit. The $3,200 you were going to give Lauren for first, last, and security was actually going toward a down payment on a purchase. Marcus Webb, the listing agent, is Lauren's boyfriend. My mother looked at Lauren. And this, I said, sliding the third document, is the preliminary title search showing your name, Dad, as co-borrower with a pending financial liability of $218,000. My father set down all 3 papers very precisely on the tablecloth, the way a person sets something down when they need their hands free to think. Lauren, he said. She had started crying. Not the soft, apologetic kind, the defensive kind, with her chin up and her jaw tight. You don't understand what it's like, she said. I've been struggling for 3 years. Nobody helps me the way they helped Claire. Claire always got everything. Claire went to college and got a good job, and nobody ever asked her to sacrifice anything, and I just needed a start. I just needed something solid under my feet. Marcus said. This was the fastest way. You forged my signature, my father said. I didn't forge it, Lauren said. Marcus filled it out. I just didn't correct it. That is the same thing, my uncle said. The sound that came out of my mother then was not a word. It was something underneath language. She had spent 3 years absorbing every version of Lauren's chaos, smoothing it over, translating it into something manageable, insisting to anyone who asked that Lauren was finding her way. This was the moment the translation failed. My father stood up from the table. He went into the kitchen. He came back with his phone. He started making calls. My aunt touched my arm. You knew about this. I found out recently, I said. Why didn't you tell us sooner? Because I needed to know exactly what I was looking at before I said anything, I said. And because I needed to not be here anymore before I said it. My aunt frowned. What do you mean, not be here anymore? I leave for Chicago in 11 days, I said. I accepted a promotion. Director of Analytics. I've already signed a lease. She blinked. Does your mother know? She knows tonight. My mother had turned from Lauren and was staring at me. She had heard. Her face was doing something complicated that I did not have a name for. Claire, she said. Mom, I said. I got an extraordinary offer and I took it. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm building my life. But we need you here, she said, and her voice cracked. We're dealing with all of this, and you're just leaving. I thought about that word, leaving, and all the freight my mother loaded into it. As if staying had ever been a choice I made freely. As if staying had been something other than being the load-bearing wall while everyone else renovated around me. You don't need me here, Mom, I said, as gently as I knew how to be. You need to deal with what Lauren has done. Those are not the same thing. My father came back into the dining room. He had the controlled manner of a person who had received very bad news and was processing it in increments. He sat down. He looked at Lauren. He said, I've spoken to a real estate attorney. We're going to have the application pulled and my name removed. Whatever penalties that involves, Lauren, you, and Marcus are going to deal with. I am not co-signing a mortgage I never agreed to. You'll ruin everything, Lauren said. We were so close. I almost had something. You almost had something built on a lie, my uncle said. I don't need a lecture from you, Lauren snapped. Lauren, my father said, and there was something in his voice I had not heard before. Not anger. Something more final than anger. I need you to stop talking right now. She stopped. The dinner ended without dessert. My aunt and uncle stayed for another hour. My uncle walking my father through the steps of getting his name off the application, and what exposure he might have in the interim. My mother sat on the couch next to Lauren, not touching her, not looking at her, which was its own kind of unprecedented. Lauren had stopped crying, and moved into a cold silence that she wore like a coat. I stayed until my aunt and uncle left. Then I stood up and gathered my things. Claire, my mother said, please don't go. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had called me on a Tuesday to tell me I would be covering my sister's mortgage, who had described this as what family does, who had used my reliability as a resource for so long that she had stopped noticing she was doing it. Mom, I said, I love you. I'm going to call you from Chicago when I'm settled. But I need you to hear something right now. She looked at me with the exhausted eyes of someone who had just watched a ceiling she thought was solid turn out to be paper. Lauren did not do this because she was struggling, I said. She did this because she has never once been asked to face a consequence alone. Every time something went wrong, you and Dad absorbed it, or I absorbed it, and she never felt the weight of it. She still isn't feeling it. She's angry at me right now, not sorry for what she did. That's not something I can fix by staying here, and it's not something you can fix by continuing to protect her from it. My mother was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Why didn't you tell me about Chicago before tonight? Because you would have spent the last 6 weeks trying to talk me out of it, I said. And I didn't have the energy to defend my own future again. She flinched. I watched her register it, the word again, and everything it meant. I hugged her. It was genuine. I pressed my face against her hair, and I held on for a moment, and I meant it entirely. I just also knew that I was leaving in 11 days, and nothing had the power to change that. I drove home. I sat in my parking lot with my travel mug, which was empty now but still warm from being in the cup holder. I thought I would feel lighter. I didn't. Not yet. I felt the particular exhaustion of a person who has been holding something heavy for years and has finally set it down, and now their arms are shaking from the effort of having held it so long. The next several days were not quiet. Lauren called me 4 times. I let all 4 calls go to voicemail. She texted me 11 messages, ranging from apologetic to accusatory, landing eventually on a long paragraph, explaining that Marcus had given her bad advice, and she couldn't be held fully responsible for what a professional in his field had told her to do. I read them all. I did not respond to any of them. My father called once. He thanked me for the documents. He sounded diminished in a way that made my chest hurt, because he had always been the kind of man who controlled every room he walked into, and now he sounded like a man discovering that the rooms had been changing without him. He asked if I was really moving to Chicago. "Yeah, Dad," I said. "I really am." He was quiet. Then he said, "You know your mother and I are proud of you, even when we don't show it right." "I know," I said. "I do know that." Another silence. I said, "Dad, you need to talk to an attorney about that application this week." "Not next week. This week." "I know," he said. "I already have an appointment." "Good." The moving truck came on a Thursday. It took 5 hours to load everything I had built into my apartment over 4 years. I stood in the empty rooms afterward and felt nothing dramatic, just the quiet geometry of a space that had been mine and was now returning to neutral. I drove to Chicago on a Friday morning. It was raining for most of Ohio and cleared somewhere around the Indiana border, and by the time I crossed into Illinois, the sky had gone that particular shade of pale silver blue that felt like a held breath about to release. My new apartment was on the 4th floor of a building near the lake. I had a window that faced east. On the first morning I woke up there, I made coffee and stood at that window with my mug, watching the water. My phone had notifications. My mother had sent a long text the night before that I read twice and then set aside to answer later. Lauren's name was not in my recent messages because I had archived her thread and muted her contact, not blocked it, just moved it to a place where it would not be the first thing I saw every time I opened my phone. There is a difference, and learning the difference had taken me longer than it should have. My father's attorney had sent my father a preliminary assessment. Marcus Webb had, it turned out, been in minor legal trouble before, for falsifying documents on 2 previous loan applications in transactions from other clients. My father was not the first person whose financial information had been used without full disclosure. The attorney thought they had a strong case to have my father's name removed and potentially to pursue further action. Lauren knew none of this yet. My cousin Becca called me 2 weeks after I arrived in Chicago. She was the family journalist, the one who always knew what was happening and had the particular gift of being able to relay information without seeming to enjoy it. She told me that Lauren and Marcus had split up. She told me this in a careful voice, as if she was watching me for a reaction. "How's she taking it?" I asked. "Hard to tell," Becca said. "She moved back into your parents' house. Your mom is letting her sleep in your old room. She seems more mad than sad." "Mad at who?" "At you, mostly. Also at Marcus. But mainly you." I exhaled through my nose. "Of course. Your dad seems different," Becca said. "Quieter. I had lunch with him and your mom last week and he said something I've never heard him say before." "What did he say?" "He said he thinks he let Lauren use your family like a system instead of raising her. He said it like he was reading from a list of things he'd been sitting with." I looked at my window. The lake was gray and restless. "That's a start," I said. "Your mom cried a little," Becca said. "Not the dramatic kind. The kind where she's just sitting there and then her eyes fill up and she doesn't say anything." "I know that kind," I said. "Are you going to come home for Thanksgiving?" I thought about it. I thought about what Thanksgiving would look like now, with the charges and the attorney and Lauren in my old room and my father quieter than he used to be. "I'm going to invite them here," I said. "If they want to come, they can come. If Lauren wants to come, she can come. But I'm not going to Columbus, just to sit in the middle of all of it again." "That's fair," Becca said. I made another cup of coffee after I got off the phone. I stood at my east window again. The lake had gone silver pink in the late afternoon, and there was a ferry crossing far out, small and deliberate, moving toward the opposite shore. There is a version of this story where I am the villain. I have heard Lauren tell it. In that version, I abandoned my family during a crisis because I cared more about my career than the people who raised me, and I weaponized documents to humiliate my sister in front of relatives, and I moved away to escape accountability. I know that version exists. I am not here to argue against it. What I know is this. I spent a long time being excellent at managing other people's financial disasters while not protecting my own. I spent a long time believing that the responsible thing to do was to absorb consequences that were not mine. I spent a long time equating love with unlimited availability, as if care was only real when it cost you something. The cost, eventually, was too high. Not because I stopped loving my family, because I started loving myself at the same level. My therapist, who I started seeing 3 weeks after moving to Chicago, asked me in our second session what I wanted my life to look like in 5 years. Nobody had asked me that question I could not remember how long. Everyone in my family had always been too busy asking what I could do for theirs. I told her I wanted a morning that felt like the one I had 2 days ago, when I woke up, made coffee, sat at my window, watched the water, and felt nothing bad coming. She nodded. She said, "That's a specific and excellent answer." I hold my coffee mug now, the way I have always held it, tight enough to feel the warmth. But the thing I was gripping it for, the steadiness I needed in the middle of every family Sunday, the bracing against the next demand, that tension is gone. My hands are warm and easy, and I am not waiting for anything to hit. My mother called last week. Not about money, not about Lauren, not about any logistics of crisis management. She called because she had found an old photo of the two of us at the Science Museum when I was 7, and she wanted to tell me I had been wearing a terrible hat and that she had kept the photo in her wallet for 24 years without me knowing. I laughed. It was a real laugh, not the kind I produced for family dinners to smooth the air, the kind that comes from somewhere uncomplicated. We talked for 40 minutes. She did not ask me for anything. She did not mention Lauren. She mentioned that my father had started a woodworking class at the community center, which was something he had talked about for 15 years and never done. She said he seemed lighter. I told her I was going to send her a photo of my apartment once I finished hanging the last few things on the wall. She said she would like that. I will tell you what I told my therapist when she asked what it felt like to finally stop. I said it felt like setting down a mug I had been carrying so long I had forgotten it was in my hands. I said it felt like realizing the warmth I thought was coming from the grip was actually coming from me. I'm finally, quietly, only carrying my own weight. And it is exactly as light as it should be.